The emergency room doors slammed open just after midnight, and the stretcher burst through like a storm crashing into calm waters. Blood soaked the sheets. Monitors screamed. Doctors shouted urgent commands. But in the middle of the chaos, something strange happened. The dying Marine on the stretcher suddenly grabbed the wrist of the newest nurse in the room, and whispered her name. The problem was simple and terrifying. It was her first night on the job. And she had never seen this man in her life. Before we continue this powerful story, take a moment to like the video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. The hospital stood on the edge of Jacksonville, Florida, close to the naval base where injured Marines were often rushed in during emergencies. For veteran nurses, nights like this were routine. But for Rachel Carter, everything still felt overwhelming. Rachel had graduated from nursing school just 3 months earlier. She had studied hard, sacrificed weekends, and fought through years of doubt to earn the right to wear the hospital badge clipped to her blue scrubs. Yet nothing in her textbooks prepared her for the reality of a trauma room at midnight. The lights were harsh. The air smelled of antiseptic and fear. Every second mattered, and every mistake could cost a life. That night had already tested her nerves. 2 car accidents, 1 elderly heart attack patient, and a child with severe asthma had filled the ER. Rachel had barely taken a breath between cases. Her hand still trembled slightly as she restocked a tray of supplies when the Marine arrived. He was rushed and surrounded by paramedics shouting vital signs. The man's body was covered in dirt and blood, his uniform torn and stained. A gunshot wound had torn through his side, and another injury had left his shoulder badly damaged. His pulse was weak. His breathing shallow. Rachel felt the room tighten with urgency as the trauma team surrounded him. Doctors began cutting away clothing. Nurses prepared 4 lines. Machines beeped frantically. Rachel stepped forward to help, trying to remember everything she had learned. Her job was simple: stabilize, assist, and stay calm. But the moment she touched his wrist to check his pulse, something unexpected happened. The Marine's eyes fluttered open just slightly. They were clouded with pain and exhaustion, yet strangely focused. His hands suddenly tightened around her wrist with surprising strength. And then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, he whispered one word. Rachel. For a second, the entire world seemed to freeze. Rachel stared at him, her heart racing. She had never seen this man before. His dark hair was matted with blood, and his face was bruised beyond recognition. Yet somehow, he knew her name. The grip loosened as his body slipped back toward unconsciousness. The trauma surgeon shouted for more saline. Another nurse adjusted the ventilator. The room returned to chaos. But Rachel's mind remained stuck on that single whisper. How did he know her name? She forced herself to focus on the work. The Marine needed surgery immediately. His blood pressure was crashing, and internal bleeding threatened to take his life before the surgeons even reached the operating room. Rachel moved quickly, handing instruments, adjusting fluids, and helping stabilize the wounded soldier. Despite the fear inside her chest, her training took over. Her hands steadied. Her voice remained calm. For nearly 40 minutes the team fought to keep him alive. Finally, the surgeon made the call to rush him upstairs to emergency surgery. As the stretcher rolled away, Rachel caught one last glimpse of the Marine's face beneath the oxygen mask. Something about him felt familiar. But she couldn't explain why. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Rachel tried to focus on other patients, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the wounded Marine. Every few minutes she found herself glancing toward the surgical wing, wondering if he was still alive. Just before dawn, one of the senior nurses approached her with a clipboard. The Marine from earlier survived surgery, the nurse said softly. Barely. But he made it. Rachel felt a quiet wave of relief wash over her. Then the nurse added something that made her heart skip. "He's asking for you." Rachel blinked in confusion. "Me?" The nurse nodded. "He woke up for a moment in recovery." "Said your name again." Rachel slowly walked toward the intensive care unit, her thoughts spinning. She had treated hundreds of patients during training rotations. Maybe he had seen her somewhere before. Maybe he was confused from the trauma. But deep inside, she sensed something deeper was unfolding. When she entered the dim ICU room, the Marine lay motionless beneath blankets and machines. Tubes ran from his arms, and a monitor displayed the fragile rhythm of his heartbeat. His chart read, Lucas Bennett, United States Marine Corps. Age 29. Rachel stepped closer to check his foreline. Suddenly, Lucas's eyes opened again. This time they were clearer. Still tired, still filled with pain, but unmistakably aware. His gaze locked onto her face, and a faint smile touched the corner of his lips. It took him several seconds to gather enough strength to speak, but when he did, his voice carried quiet certainty. "You don't remember me," he murmured. Rachel's breath caught. Lucas explained slowly, pausing between words as exhaustion pulled at him. 8 years earlier, before nursing school, before hospital life, Rachel had been just a college student working part-time at a small diner in Savannah, Georgia. One rainy night, a young Marine had walked into that diner looking completely lost. He had just received terrible news that his younger brother had died in an accident. The Marine had sat at the counter staring at the table, unable to eat, unable to speak, barely able to breathe through the grief. Most people in the diner ignored him. But Rachel had noticed. She had sat beside him during her break, offered him coffee, and simply listened while he talked about his brother. She didn't try to fix his pain. She just stayed there until the storm in his heart quieted enough for him to stand again. Before leaving, the Marine had asked her name. She had told him, Rachel. Then she told him something simple he never forgot. "You're stronger than this moment. One day you'll help someone else survive theirs." Lucas looked at her now through tired eyes filled with gratitude. "That night," he whispered, "you saved me." Rachel felt tears gathering in her eyes as the memory slowly returned. She had completely forgotten the moment. To her, it had been a small act of kindness during a busy shift. But to Lucas, it had changed everything. He had stayed in the Marines. He had rebuilt his life. He had carried her words through deployments and battles across the world. And tonight, when he thought he might die, he recognized her face. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment right now to like the video and share it with someone who believes that even the smallest acts of kindness can change a life. And before the story ends, I have a special request. Comment the word kindness below if you believe one simple moment can echo for years. Over the next several weeks, Lucas slowly recovered in the hospital. His injuries were severe, but his determination was stronger. Rachel visited his room often during her shifts, sometimes bringing coffee, sometimes just checking on his progress. What began as a strange coincidence grew into a quiet friendship built on gratitude and respect. Rachel realized something powerful during those weeks. Nurses don't always see the full story of the people they help. A single kind word, a small moment of compassion, can travel through someone's life in ways we may never witness. One rainy afternoon, just before Lucas was discharged, he stood carefully from his wheelchair and shook Rachel's hand. This time his grip was steady and strong. 8 years ago, he said softly, "You reminded me life was worth fighting for." Rachel smiled gently. "And tonight," she replied, "you reminded me why I became a nurse." Sometimes heroes wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear scrubs. And sometimes they're simply ordinary people who choose kindness in a moment when it matters most. And if this story moved you, touched your heart, or reminded you of the power of compassion, please like the video, share it, and subscribe for more stories that prove humanity still shines in the darkest moments.